Hello, everybody. Welcome to an unexpected podcast. We have today Rainier and Evan and me, and this is going to be a bit of an Ardacon preparation episode. Ardacon's coming up in a few weeks. Evan and I are getting set to head across the pond to be there, and Rainier will also be there, as will Mick and as will Devin. And what we're doing on this particular podcast is we're going to go over the lists that the team is bringing, and then one other list we're going to go over from a listener slash trader named Rob, who's not going to be playing on our Ardacon team. He's going to be playing with the Wanderers of the Wild. He's given us his list to review anyway, even though we're sure it's a decoy designed to lead us astray. But you never know. We're going to take a look at it, and we're going to come up with a whole bunch of suggestions to make it worse that hopefully Rob will incorporate and make it easier for us to beat him when we hit him like one after another.
Yeah, we're just gonna be like, bring Faramir, Rob, bring Faramir.
Yeah, bring Faramir all the time. Right. So we're not going to do a listener list this time because Rob is going to fall into that slot. But we're going to go through a whole bunch of lists and talk about what we're bringing, why they're bringing them, and post some questions about it. So, Evan, why don't you put up the list from our listener slash trader, Rob?
We'll just refer to him as Benedict Arnold.
Right.
I love how he has been downgraded to a listener. Like he isn't even a member of the podcast anymore. He's just a listener now.
He is dead to us.
Indeed, he is. All right. Well, I guess I'll go over Rob's list real quick. He doesn't have it organized into warbands, he told us, which is, classic Rob. Doesn't even have his army ready for us fully. But he's
just going to
got,
show up and say this is all one warband and just dump it all on the table.
Of course. That's such a classic thing for him to do. So he's got Pure Gondor, Boromir with all the stuff except the lance for obvious reasons, Hurin on horse, and then Madril, and then it looks like 10 Minas Tirith warriors with shields, 10 Fountain Court guards with shields, 8 rangers with spears, and 2 knights with shields. So, and just looking at this sort of initially, this is a very stock standard Gondor list. Just doing the math right here, this is
33 models,
looks
right?
like 33 models. And we've got 9 bows in there, including Madril. So it's pretty good on that front.
Might too, wow.
Yes, it has a lot of might, 12 might in total, so he's not going to struggle in that area. I've always been interested by the way he configures his shield walls, because what he seems to like to do is he has his warriors with shields in front, and then he puts or at least some of his Fountain Court guards behind, which is definitely interesting, and obviously it's probably the most effective way to do it against strength 3, but against perhaps terror causing models in strength 4 it might struggle a bit more. So in my personal taste, I would maybe drop one guy and give his warriors with shield spears as well, so I can keep that battle line flexible to choose whether or not I want to put the Fountain Court guard in front or the warriors in front. But that's just me.
The warriors get defense 7 with 2 guys touching them or 3 guys touching them. Shield wall.
2.
It has to be 2 warriors, so it wouldn't work just in combat. Because the warrior would have to back up and he'd just be touching Fountain Court guards and they don't give the bonus, so they'd be defense 6.
Yeah, that makes sense. And then if you shoot at it, you can of course shoot at the sides.
You shoot at the guy in the end. Right.
Yes.
To the extent defense 6 and defense 7 matter for shooting.
They do.
I mean, they do. It's just in certain circumstances it matters. In certain circumstances it doesn't.
That is true. But you are killing basically double the amount of defense 6 guys as you are defense 7 guys. So it will matter.
It doesn't matter against elf bows. It matters against matters against regular bows, and then it matters against
Mhm.
crossbows.
Yeah, strength, which are, I think, very common. I'd say strength 2 and strength 4 are the most common
Yeah.
bows, especially right now with Lake Town and Assault on Lothlorien and Assault upon Helm's Deep. They all have very strong either strength 2 shooting or strength 4 shooting.
Yeah.
So that's definitely something to consider.
It's a fun list, though. I mean, he has. I mean, what I would do is I just try to dehorse Boromir and takes out a lot of the killing power, but he's got Madrigal for like scenarios. He's got some March throughout it. Huron to stop from hero points. It's pretty good.
Yeah, I do
Um,
enjoy the oh, sorry to cut you off, Dad. I'll
that's
say
fine.
this really quick. I do enjoy the addition of Huron in this list just to add sort of another dimension um along with Boromir, though obviously it has the challenge of also making the army a little bit smaller. 33 models isn't too bad for 650, but it's also not the best.
Yeah, I was
So that's
curious
sort of a
about that.
trade-off
How
we
would you
made.
say 33 models stacks up against typical lists that you'll see at 650? Is it
So
low or
I think it's about average.
high? Okay.
I mean, the list I'm bringing, which we'll go through in a minute, is also 33 models. You know, it's, I mean, I'm not sure if it's, average if you like took all the lists and added them together and divided by the number, whether that would be the average, because there are going to be a bunch of lists, I think, that are, going to be in the 40s, or then once you add in the goblin towns, are going to be in the 80s. Or even the 90s, and they'll bulk up the numbers. But I think for the lists that aren't explicitly going for, I want a lot of models, and we'll have some high priced heroes in there, I think 33 models is about average, with low with high 20s, I think, being on kind of the low end of what can actually work, unless you're going to something that's like all mounted. Like, well, I'm actually curious to see what mixed model count is. Spoilers, but unless you're going something like all mounted or all heroes, I think probably the high 20s is really about as low as you could go and still be viable.
Interesting.
But I think we're all in agreement that Rob should drop the flag on Boromir for the lance, right? I mean, I know that's what Henry would say.
No. Come on, Dad. You don't take the lance with Boromir. Drop the flag, don't take the lance.
Don't take the
That's how
lance.
you do it.
You should
Yeah.
just do Boromir unmounted and take all those extra points and just don't play with them. That's my suggestion.
Yeah. Honestly, you should just make like a 300 point Gondor list. Like, Rob, you're so good that like you'd be able to make it work. You got to prove that you're better than everybody else.
If you guys hadn't kind of like jumped whole hog off on this tangent, we actually had a chance of convincing Rob to drop the flag and take the lance. And
Did
then
you guys really?
maybe we could have let him into our unified agreement that Faramir would really be a better choice than Huron for this list. I mean, you gotta put the bros together, don't you?
You
Yeah,
do.
exactly.
I mean, you can get the extra points for him just by switching the flag to the lance.
Mm-hmm.
And you get, the brothers. I don't know. All right. Well, that would have been
All right.
fun.
Well, let's see mixed list, because I think mixed list is actually pretty is really good. Cav, I think, is gonna do good at this event.
All right. So let's go down and let's talk about mixed list.
All right. All right, let's see. So, he has, it doesn't state it here, but this is the Riders of Theoden Legendary Legion. So and just assume that all of these guys are mounted because they have to take the horses. So we have Theoden, 5 Riders of Rohan, 2 Royal Guards, and 2 Royal Guards with throwing spears, Gamling with the banner, 5 riders, 2 royal guards, 2 with throwing spears. And then let's see, we also have Durnhelm, Mary, 2 riders of Rohan, 2 Royal Guards, and 2 Royal Guards with throwing spears. So all in all, it looks like we have a grand total of 12 Royal Guards. It looks like half of them have throwing spears, and then 12 Riders of Rohan, just straight up. And then we have the 3 heroes being Theoden, Gamling, and Durnhelm, which I would say are probably the first 3 heroes that you want to take in a list like this. Durnhelm with the multiple, well, Durnhelm just being incredible in general with the high number of attacks, the large amount of just heroic resources in general, and just being very, very cheap, along with their ability to combo with Gamling. For those of you who aren't aware, because Mary is technically separate from Aowen in the Durnhelm profile, you can basically keep Gamling with Banner right next to the Durnhelm model, and then Mary can call basically a free heroic action every turn because he spends his 1 might and then he gets it back immediately. And then Theoden is obviously required in this army and is very good. So all in all, 28 models, which is a very large all-cav army, I would say, at this points level, and 12 shots, which on all-cav isn't amazing, but it'll serve its purpose.
Yeah, I think 28 models all cav is really good. And I like how he didn't go too heavy with the Royal Guard because you would have lost some model count. And the Riders of Rohan with their bows are just an excellent take for their points, in my opinion, especially paired with Theoden. They get like the bonuses. It's a pretty good list, to be honest, especially considering all your mounted heroes have a horse master. So it's really good.
So yeah, so I mean, when I play Riders of Theoden at this points level, my lists look a lot like this. So I think this is a good list. I guess the only question I have about this is whether you want to give Durnhelm a throwing spear. Because I mean, one of the things that Mary on the back of Durnhelm near Gamling can do is give you that +1 to wound on the charge on the throwing spear, which, you know,
Dehorse someone
sometimes,
like, say, Boromir.
yeah, you can. I mean, every once in a while, you can either like kill the critical guy, charge through him, and get to someplace else, or as you say, you know, charge into somebody who's mounted and just kill their horse with a throwing spear. And I mean, it's 5 points, which I think you could do by dropping one of the royal guards with throwing spear to a rider of Rohan, and then taking the throwing spear off of one of the other royal guards. And I mean, that's kind of my only thought on this one. The only other thing being whether sometimes when I've organized this list, I have put the riders, basically I've created like a skirmish. You know, one of the warbands is like the skirmish warband, and one of the warbands, and it's usually Theoden, is kind of like the more heavy hitting warband. Because you know you want the fight 5 near him, and it's kind of less important for the skirmish.
Mhm.
And I wonder if that's something to think about doing, you know, concentrating the royal guard with Theoden and putting more of the riders with Durnhelm, which doesn't mean that they can't all operate together anyway if you want them to, but it just kind of gives you that option if say you're playing like Reconnoiter or something like that, of having the kind of crash in warband with Theoden and the skirmish and sneak around the side warband with Durnhelm. That may be a way to give you a little more deployment flexibility.
I like that idea.
Warbands.
I think there definitely may be some merit to either making Durnhelm's warband all riders of Rohan, or just maybe slotting just one royal guard in there and having the rest of them as riders. Because I think Durnhelm's small warband size compared to Gamling and Theoden, who I believe each have 9 models in their warband, so they're larger warbands. They're probably going to be the more heavy hitting force. And having
Right.
sort of more of a warband drop that's more generally supposed to move around and react and skirmish and grab objectives. And B, just a warband that will help you out in scenarios such as divide and conquer, where you can just put the entire bulk of your cavalry force at one
Right.
end of the board and have the sort of token Durnhelm force that can still move really fast so they can get out of any trouble. But also just allow the bulk of your army to stay together. I like the idea of mixing up the warbands just a little bit to sort of help that out.
Yeah, the other advantage that gives too, by the way, is even when you're fighting together, what it means is you can have your two heavy war bands that kind of charge in, because you always want like a third of, whenever you're playing cav army and you charge in, you want about a third of your cav back in reserve. And that's, so that if you lose the heroic move off on the next turn, and your front line of cavalry gets surrounded, you have your reserve cav that can then kind of charge in behind to save them and pick off the guys that are coming in and surrounding your front line. And Durnhelm can do that with all, basically you put Durnhelm with a warband of all riders in the second rank is the reserve. Gambling and Theoden go in. If they end up getting surrounded, then Durnhelm can charge in. And if, on that turn when Gambling and Theoden charge, Durnhelm and her riders can just kind of move up half distance and then shoot. And if they're not needed in the front rank the next turn, they can do that again and then shoot with their bows from that, kind of reserve position if they're not actually needed to come in and charge. Which is something, the Royal Guards and the Royal Guards with throwing spears aren't necessarily going to be able to do, because they won't be close enough to the front to be within throwing spear range.
It's good. It's really good. I'm curious how it's going to go.
Yeah,
But
I mean, the only thing that is, kind of worrisome about it, and I don't think there is a solution to this problem with this list, is it doesn't have a good answer to like powerful fight 6 heroes. But I mean, other than, charge either, I mean, basically your answer is you charge Durnhelm in, you strike up, and you hope.
yeah. And I think the
And
12 bows can make you skirmish pretty well up against like a fight 6 hero, because you're not going
right.
to they're not going to have as many people, so you can soften them up, hopefully do a dehorse, and then like get into combat.
Yep.
And how many of them have heroic defense?
Gambling is the only one.
Okay, which is pretty good for those situations.
Yeah, I mean, he's got heroic defense. The only downside about Gambling is it's hard to use him as a tank, because he's also got the banner, and if tanking doesn't work, then you lose the banner.
Yeah, and the 2 wounds and one fate, like it is. I've seen 666 be rolled by someone like Boromir, and they just die. So
see, 2 wounds or 3 wounds. It's been a while since I played with him.
I believe it's 2 wounds.
Let's see what his stats are here.
But it is interesting, like you see like all these models, which is really good, but then you realize, okay, he did lose out on those more beefy heroes like Eomer.
Yep. Yeah, he has 2 wounds, 1 fate. You're right.
But I've never seen him play, to be honest, and he does pretty good. So he's probably going to play a lot of finesse and movement and whatnot.
Yep, that's Mick. Mick, finesse is my middle name. He's like, I'm not even going to try and pronounce his last name. All right. Okay. Any last thoughts on Mick's list there?
It's fun.
All right, moving on to someone I have never heard of before. So this Matt guy, it looks like he's taking the filthiest legendary legion that there is. Well, actually, I'd say it's in the top 3 filthiest of legendary legions. I'll give you a little pass, because I'd say Assault on Lothlorien and Assault upon Helm's Deep may be slightly filthier than it.
Flashback to all
it's
of our group
close.
chats where we're like, somebody better take this legion if we want to
Yeah.
compete. We're all like, oh, it's horrible, but we're like, you better take it, Matt. You better take it.
Yeah, so
I want
this
to have fun.
I think our end result is that I don't think anyone is taking either of those. Actually, isn't one of our players might be taking Assault upon Helm's Deep, but no one wanted to do Lothlorien. Um, anyways, back to the list. We've got Dragon Emperor, 15 Black Dragons. This says with Pike, I assume they also have shields.
Yeah, they do.
And then one Cataphract with drum, obviously a Black Dragon, and then two Cataphracts without drums. And then second warband is Borgir, with three bowmen in there, two guys with pikes and shields, and then Rutabi with what appears to be the front line of your army with 7 warriors with shields. So before anybody sort of discusses this list and maybe ways to change it, Dad, would you like to add some context onto this?
Yeah, so I mean, this is very similar to the list I ran last year and very similar to the ones that I've run this at this points level, run this at before. And this is what I pretty much have it distilled down to at this point. And basically Rutabi deploys as a front line. The Dragon Emperor deploys behind and fills in with all the pikes, and then has its cluster of 3 Black Dragon Cataphracts in the back to do whatever I need cavalry for. And Borgir kind of slots in somewhere behind the Phalanx or the Emperor, or Rutabi, and has that little skirmishing force of bows with a couple of pikes to support him, that either will get mixed, will likely get mixed into the Phalanx, but a couple of pikes end up. I end up, I think, with 2 or 3 pikes that are superfluous to the Phalanx, and they basically end up standing behind the warriors with bow. And hopefully, if I've done it right, they're Black Dragons, so that I get fight 4 or fight 5 within range of the Emperor behind the bows as well. And that's just my little flanking shooting force to protect one side of the Phalanx, while either the Emperor or the Cataphracts protect the other side.
Okay, so the thought process with specifically the 2 warriors with pikes and shields in Borgir's warband is to basically add a little bit more support to the bowmen.
Yeah, and I mean, if this army all deploys together, those 2 non-Black Dragons end up fighting in the midst of the Black Dragons, so that their lower fight value doesn't matter, and the Black Dragons then go and support the warriors. But you can end up with situations where Borgir's on his own, and then you've got 3 warriors with bow, with Borgir standing behind one of them and 2 pikemen standing behind the other 2.
Mm.
Makes
It's a good
sense.
list. I mean, I think there's so much talk about it, and we've mentioned it before too. It's just the only thing you'll have to, of course, you do take into consideration is how to separate them with those scenarios where you got to get all over the board. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and when you do that, that's kind of what either the Black Dragons are for, or you use the drum to kind of send little task groups out. I mean, I think the big debate we had on this before was at 650. Do you not take Rutabi and take a captain instead? And Evan and I played a couple of test games with that. Or actually, I think we played one test game, and I played another test game with that against somebody else. And the answer, at least for me, is you definitely take Rutabi, because the Dragon Emperor ends up being your only hitter if the captain is in the list, and the Dragon Emperor being the only hitter is not what you want, because he's so unwieldy when he's up on his platform. You can't get him where he needs to be. You need Rutabi for that.
Yeah, and it makes the grind of the game too really good. To where if you come up against another army with low might, just what she gives is really good.
Yeah, and the corollary to this is that I at least don't take any of the expensive what are they, the Dragon Cult acolytes,
Mm-hmm.
because they're too expensive for what they give you. They drop your model count down, and they're also too vulnerable. They get shot or killed in the front rank.
Yeah, and I like that too, because like this, if you had like something like 24 or 25 models, I don't think that would have been good.
Yeah, I mean, adding a few, depending on how you do it, it doesn't take it down that much, but it does take it down into the 20s if you have a significant number, and that's too small.
It also, of course, drastically reduces your ability to stay on the battlefield because while you do get those extra attacks, you don't have the defense 6, your defense 4.
Yeah.
So
True.
that just
And then
makes a
what you want
very,
to do,
very flimsy army, which is not good for, especially an army with Rutabi, that wants to stick around and eventually grind the opponent down, have more might points than them, and beat them that way.
Yeah.
true. And I think like in comparison to Rob's list, I like this better because Rob's list has some of that defense 4 in the list, and that's easy targets. Plus, also this will be in your face with the drum like right away, and that's really disgusting. You know what I mean? So I like this. I'm curious how you do too, Matt. Yeah, I'm just hoping we get 3 wins each.
Here's
That's
hoping.
here's the
There you go. All right.
All right.
Any other absent any thoughts on this? Let's move on.
All right. Moving on to my list. I guess I'll read it out, give a short explanation of why I structured it the way I did, and then we'll figure it out from there. So I have Helm's Guard, I believe it's called. So I decided to take a very heavily infantry version of this force, which in my opinion is the only way this force is actually functional. So starting out with Helm on horse, and then I've got 7 Royal Guards with spear, 1 warrior with spear, shield, and banner, 6 warriors with shields and spears, and then 4 warriors with bows. And then I have a captain with axe and horse. The axe isn't any extra points, but I just wanted to specify it because it is the obvious best option to take on a mounted Rohan captain. And then 5 Royal Guards with spears, 4 warriors with shields and spears, and then 3 warriors with bows, and then the captain again on horse with 2 outriders on horse, 1 outrider on foot, and 2 warriors with bows. So the way I decided to structure this is I went through a ton of different variations. One of which was much more homogenous. It was basically a front line of Royal Guards, a couple more Royal Guards in there, and then a back line of warriors with shields and spears and warriors with bows and spears. And that list also ended up not having Royal Guards with spears. The Royal Guards just had swords. But it was basically the same model count of 38. But I decided to change it up because I wanted to focus on a more objective-based army, one that could be a little bit more versatile with how it positioned itself. First thing I wanted to do was at least try out a couple games with just having every single model have some sort of form of ranged weapon, because I feel like taking the Royal Guards with just swords and no spears, while it does save a bunch of points, it also limits the flexibility of and skirmishing power of your army just a little bit, which I think is a very important aspect of this army. So that's sort of what I theorized. The third warband is basically it's going to be my pseudo warband drop. And it's also going to be my objective grabbing warband. So basically it's there just to sort of do what we were talking about with Mick's Durnhelm warband, which is grab objectives. Every single model in that warband except for the captain has a bow. So you can do a lot of shooting with that list. And it's got all of the maneuverable models. And then the 2 big warbands are the ones with the Royal Guard, being the captain and Helm. So that was the thought process.
It's good. I like that because then I like how tactical you are worth too, because like the two captains with the heroic marches can maximize your range as well. And I love a good heroic march with throwing spears right up into someone's face. All of a sudden they have that big range. So it's good. It's really good. And with all, I don't know. I like lists that have multiple facets to them. So like one game, Helm's going to be the hero. One game, the Royal Guard battle line will be the hero. One game, the spears will be the hero. One game, like the Outriders taking objectives will be the hero. So I like that versatility in the list, and knowing someone who's tactical like you, I think you're going to do pretty good with this.
Remind me what benefits Helm confers vis-a-vis fight value. How does that work?
So it is a 6-inch fight value bubble, which is why I focused on the Royal Guards so much for the main line, because Helm is going to stay with the main line and give them fight 5, which is obviously really, really big at 650 points. So the thought process was I wanted Helm. I needed the captains to fill out the warbands, and I think captains on horse are the most efficient way to do that. And then I wanted a bunch of fight 5 guys to basically be able to swarm the enemy and also outfight them as well. So it's 38 models, and then there are 12 Royal Guards that can get to fight 5 in that list.
Does this Legendary Legion give the mounted troops the +1 strength on the charge, or no?
No, it does not. That's why I didn't take a lot of mounted troops.
Yeah. Yeah, that makes sense. I mean, the one thought I had with this would be to take one of the Outriders on horse and flip it to the other captain's warband. Two reasons. I mean, I think the way this army naturally wants to deploy is Helm in his battle line deploys in the center. The captain with most of the infantry deploys next to it, and then the captain with the skirmishy guys either kind of deploys in the back or deploys on one flank. And the advantage to, I think, putting one Outrider in the other captain's warband is that gives you the ability to grab objectives on both sides of the battle line, or also the ability to have a flanking cav unit on the other side of the battle line. Because you got a pretty big battle line. You're probably going to, you're probably gonna you're probably gonna be longer than the other side's battle line, and having cav, even if they're just Outriders, that can like flip around to the back of somebody's warband on both sides, I think is going to be useful. And I don't think you frankly lose anything by taking that one Outrider on a horse and putting it in the other warband. I think you can still do whatever it needs to do. It just gives you the option to deploy it in a different place on the battlefield. And I mean, I guess the other question would be whether you want to take that one Outrider and see if you could find the point somewhere to upgrade it into a regular cav or a Royal Guard, and whether you want to do that. Be nice, I think, to I don't know. I mean, the regular cav gives you the slightly tougher defense, and the Royal Guard, if you can get the points, gives you a potentially fight 5 cavalry model that can accompany Helm if need be. And I don't think it's necessarily a big ask in either case. I mean, an Outrider is what, 13 points, and a Rider is 14?
Yes, that's correct.
Yeah. I mean, you could drop a throwing spear off of like one guy and make an Outrider into a Royal Guard, and then you could drop a throwing spear off of another guy if you wanted to, and give that Royal Guard a throwing spear. You basically trade.
So you have what? You have two horses outside of Helm, basically, And what you're saying, Matt, is convert one of those outriders to a royal guard.
Yeah, well, you would end, yeah,
The
instead of
mounted outrider or the foot outrider?
the
Do you want
mounted
another
outrider.
horse in there? Okay.
No, I think you would
'Cause
take, you would
I
take
like
one of
the
those.
two mounted outriders, to be honest, because I think this event is going to be such a grind for objectives, to be honest. And I think having a cav model that can go 10 like that and still hit on a 4 whilst moving, I think that's more detrimental than getting a royal guard.
Yeah,
But that's just
that
my
Yeah,
that was
opinion.
my
that
thought
may be.
process as well, because I felt like um the point of the Outriders is really going to be getting the objectives, because I have a very strong battle line and I already have 3 mounted models that I can throw
Yeah,
in with the main line with the helm and the 2 captains. And really I think the way I'm going to dispose of sort of back models on the objectives is taking my bowmen, using them as sort of like a skirmish force and shooting them off, along with the outriders, which are moving half, which still takes them very far, and then shooting on the 4s and just taking out the guys in the back, and then being able to be cheap so they're not taking up a lot of points, whilst also able to sit on the back objectives, auto pass the stand fasts because of their special rule, and then just snipe out guys that are either trying to reclaim the objectives or just shooting at the back of the opponent's battle line. So that was my thought process with using outriders as my mounted guys.
yeah. The captains, do they get a fight value buff from Helm or no?
They do not. That's
Yeah,
why
so
I made them super cheap.
yeah,
But
so
I like the captains even if they don't get that, because you can, of course, yeah, the axe you can get strength 5, but they are really just to get that battle line of throwing weapons wherever you want, or position things, or even the captain with the outriders can heroic march and get those outriders on the opposite side of the board if you have reconnoiter or something. It's quite a cheeky list.
I mean, they also
In a
can
good
be
way.
the figures that run around the, run around the flanks of the enemy's battle line and charge into one guy with a spear, call heroic combat, kill that one guy, and then go in and block, 2 more. So maybe they
Mhm.
When
play that
I've
role.
when
Fair
I've
enough.
used an army similar to this before, that's actually what I'll do. Is sometimes I'll take a captain and then support him with 1 outrider just to guarantee like a heroic combat, and then just send them behind the battle line to either grab back objectives or harass behind the opponent and get at models they don't want me to get at. So that's the
Yeah,
thought process with them.
And what's your
yeah,
model count?
38.
30. That's really good. Yeah.
and Helm gets mighty hero, and he gets what, free hero? Is it free hero combats he gets
Yes.
on top of
So
that?
that actually increases the power of my shooting a bit, because I can call heroic shoots every single turn, which means I'll always be shooting before my opponent. Um, but yeah, there's a whole bunch of things you can do with him. He doesn't have heroic march though, so I have to rely on my captains for that.
Yeah, but once the captains have heroic marched, they can spend their might on heroic combats because they got Helm who
All
can
heroic
both
moves.
call heroic moves and then still call heroic combat afterwards.
Yep.
Yep. Okay. Makes sense. Good list. I'd still move 1 outrider over to the other captain's warband. I don't see
Yeah,
any
I'll
downside to
definitely
that.
consider that. All right. The last one, Rainier. So
Oh,
we have
back from retirement, boys. Was that the
exactly.
updated version that I sent you to, Evan? Let me see. Yeah.
It looks like it.
There
It
might be
was
a
the
there
lowest
there is a
down.
mistake. I'm like up 1 bow, and this is kind of like the rough draft.
All right. Well, let's see. So we have Suladan. Uh, I assume he's on an armored horse because that's what the point says. Um, 5 serpent riders, so you're going super heavy on the cav.
Only 3 of those serpent riders have spears.
Oh no,
No, I
then
think
it's
those
gonna
are the
be
Haradrim warriors.
yeah,
Oh,
then it's
okay.
gonna be
The
7 bow
7
and 3
Haradrim
with spear.
warriors. Yeah.
Okay.
And then 1 Watcher of Karna. I assume this guy has twin blades. Yep.
You know it.
The only version of the Watchers of Karna that you'll ever take. Don't take the bow guys, they suck. And then we have Dalamir with 2 crossbows, 8 shields, 8 spear shields, and then a captain. Does that captain have a crossbow or no?
He does, yeah.
He does. Okay. And then 8 crossbows, and then 4 corsairs. Are they do they have no extra equipment?
Just the sword.
Just
Yeah.
a sword. Okay. So we have 36 models.
46 models.
46.
46 models, yes. 36 would be awful. We have you said 10 crossbows, but it looks like 11 crossbows, if I'm not mistaken,
Oh yeah,
with
that's
the
true.
captain.
Yeah, I have
Um
6 cav, 11 crossbows, 6 bows because I made a mistake. I went a little over, and 20 throwing weapons. And I believe my break point is you have to kill 24.
you're good, aren't you, on bow limit? Because you have what, 13 models in Suladan's warband? So you can put
Right.
7 in there with bows.
You can. Okay, then I'm good. Perfect.
Yeah. So obviously the thought process behind this list is, I assume, just cram as many crossbows in there, and then once you've maxed out your Corsair warbands, just try and fill up on Suladan's warband with as many bows as you can. And
Yeah.
uh
I want something that's like forgiving in the sense that there's enough models that I can make a mistake here or there. Because I don't know. I know I haven't played this in so long, and there are going to be a lot of competitive players at Ardacon, so I know I'm going to make a few mistakes. The idea of it is to kind of play defensively. I like the captain because it gives me more models, so I could do that, plus the heroic march. I like the crossbow on him because he could take out at 650. You're going to see a lot of Boromirs here and stuff like that. I could take out a horse with that respect. The 5 serpent riders, I'm a little iffy about. I might change up 1 or 2 of them to be Haradrim raiders with a bow, and then I can like fill up some points. But yeah, I know the list needs cav because I'm pretty sure we're going to see a lot of cav or fast moving models at the event. So I kind of want that to counter it. Plus, it's the only really killing power in the list, which because they're fight 4 with lances, and you have Soladan in there as well. So yeah, idea of it is pepper it up. The crossbows aren't just the list. I have 10, which is nice, but I also have 7 bows that
You
can
have
be a little
11.
mobile. Oh, 11, yeah, sorry, 11, 7 bows at a while. So it's 18 shooting, but it's not like the only aspect of my list. Throwing weapons, the 20 throwing weapons also are to be a little cheeky here and there, depending on the scenario. Dalmir would be my leader because he doesn't really get wounded that often, and I don't want to put my banner and leader points in one model that has 1 fate. So yeah, it gives me a little bit of balance, and the backstabber with a 6-inch banner I kind of like. So it is a little soft. If I come up against like a pure cav list, it can like knock it down. Which is why I want as many serpent riders and cav to kind of like tie things up. But yeah, I'm hoping to do okay. My goal is 3 wins. So
Yeah. Um, yeah, I mean, I mean, this is going to be a devastating shooting list. The only, I think it's going to struggle if it ends up in a scenario like Contest of Champions where it has to do like a head-to-head
oh yeah.
fight. Because you're right, this is pretty soft.
Yeah,
Depends. Yeah,
if it goes up
it's
against fight
interesting.
5 and high defense, that's a big struggle against it.
Yeah.
I
So
think the
so
high defense, especially in something like Contest of Champions, because you always have tricks, right? In contest, you can shoot into the enemy hero's combat, um, to basically stop them from getting kill points. But high defense, something like a defense 7, like spam dwarf list, may be challenging for you, if they have a fast moving way to get to you. Just because it's very hard to wound them. So even your crossbows are wounding on 6s, and they've got probably the strength 4 to wound you super easily, and then the high defense and high fight value that makes it hard to crack.
yeah. I mean,
It
the
is one of
Dragon
those
Emperor
things where
Legion will also be a problem.
you need to pepper up the opponent before you go
Yeah.
head to head. Like my goal is not to go head to head. I'm really hoping you get some of those fast moving scenarios or some of those like mail I don't know, some not maelstrom, but those scenarios where you got to split your troops up because yeah, we'll see though.
So this is definitely one where if you get Contest of Champions, you're going to deploy your kind of Corsairs in a screen in front of Dalamir. Dalamir is going to be in the back. You wait for the enemy champion to charge somebody other than Dalamir, and you have like all 10 of your crossbows set up to shoot into
Oh
that
yeah.
fight.
Oh yeah. Yeah. But all the thrown weapons too, because the thrown weapons are pretty good at like kind of killing your own guys.
Yeah, I
Or
mean, I
giving
assume most of the guys with throwing weapons are going to end up fighting somebody else.
yeah.
But the crossbows can kind of hide in the back and shoot in. Yeah, I wonder. I'm just the only thing I'm hesitating at now is the Serpent Riders with the so you're gonna have three with bow spear basically.
Well, I could go that way. I kind of like the idea of a cav contingent because I
Oh
used to
no,
play with
no, I'm
like
sorry. I said Serpent Riders, and what I meant was Haradrim Warriors. You're gonna have three with bow spear and four with just
yeah,
bow. Yeah.
yeah.
Um, yeah, I get that. And then one Watcher of Karna that's
And that'll
running
give like a
around.
semi-battle line, but it also gives me the opportunity to make them dual purpose. So like once the Corsairs are in combat, you can throw them behind an Arbalister, you can throw them behind a regular Corsair soldier and stuff.
Yeah.
It is 46 models. I'm like, oh, that's low, but I think it's good enough. And then of course Ardacon has a lot of houses and stuff in their on their boards too, so you're gonna see a lot of small avenues and whatnot, which I'm gonna kind of try to avoid, but those make good shooting avenues.
Yep. I mean, this is something that could also give like Assault on Lothlorien a run for its money, just because of how much it shoots back.
Yeah,
So
yeah. But
okay.
Salt and Hems Deep is just gonna destroy me.
I'm with you by the way. I'm with you by the way on the Serpent Riders.
Yeah.
Um, I would keep the Serpent Riders. So I actually think this would be so depending on the scenario and kind of depending on the terrain. Because I mean, Dalamir is your leader, so you can just hide him behind some terrain, and none of those shooty things are gonna hit him. And Suladan, I would think you would just kind of park behind a convenient house if there is one there. And then everybody else just spreads out and skirmishes. And I think you could probably do a pretty good deal of, as long as you aren't presenting. I mean, basically you hide all your heroes where they can't get shot by the engines. And then you spread everybody out and just skirmish. I think would probably be a decent response to Assault on Helm's Deep. And just say, I'm not gonna engage with you. I'm just gonna have a single wide line, and I'm gonna trade you shot for shot. So your big engines are like they get lucky killing one guy a turn.
Yeah. And Suladan does pretty good with his fight five against basic, I guess, fight four models. Like he can do a good rogue combat or two and like take out a bunch of them.
Yeah, although as soon as he comes out, he's gonna get targeted by every
That's true.
ballista on the board. But
My only concern is
maybe
like sprinkle them in and they come like little by little, and then the
yeah.
crossbows just take them out one by one. Like
I mean, I think you wait to commit Suladan until the Urukai have massed somewhere, and you can use your opponent's own Urukai as cover. So if they're going to shoot into Suladan, they're going to have like three in the ways for Urukai before they can even get to him. That may well be the way to go. Interesting. All right, I like it. So
Yeah.
okay, That is all the lists we have to review. This is going to be a bit of a short episode, but that's fine since we're recording this on a Thursday afternoon. Well, I'm playing hooky from work. So we will wrap this up. We'll get this out and be out there for Ardacon. And for all of our listeners who will be at Ardacon, come up and say hi. We'd love to hear from you. And maybe we'll end up across the table from you because pretty much all of us will be there.
Yeah.
We'll
We're not as
there.
good as we sound, guys. We're not as good as we sound. Just joking.
All righty.
I don't think we sound good, Rainier, so we're good on that
That's
front.
true.
So
We're probably better than we sound, to be honest.
All right. So we'll see if we can get maybe one more episode out before we head to Ardacon. And then I hope we'll be able to do some episodes from Ardacon. That would be great. So we'll talk to you later. See you soon.
See you guys.